introducing the audience to the standard that is used for the development of medical devices, both national and international standard. By the way, my name is Teddy Wicaksono. If you haven't known me, I'm the head of Biomedical Engineering Department at Swiss German University. I will be your host and moderating this seminar. So I personally also have been conducting research along all my scientific career, especially recently in the field of biomedical sensor and biomedical instrumentation. And during this, of course, experience, I have also personally encountered many experiences, especially when we need standards, when we develop new instruments or we implement new instruments or measurement system, we have to comply the existing standard. And this standard is especially important when it is related to biomedical application. Yeah, maybe unfortunately, maybe what I feel personally is that not many standard has been established for biomedical application. And later maybe we can listen and we can hear from Pak Ega what is the current state of the art development of this standard, either nationally or internationally, for medical devices. Okay, without further ado, I will put the control of the screen to Pak Ega, and Pak Ega, you may start the presentation by sharing your screen.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Dedi. Hello everyone, my name is Adindra Vickar Ega. I will show the material. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. It is my first time to give a lecture to students in the college. By the way, my name is Adindra Vickar Ega. I'm from National Standardization Agency of Indonesia, or Badan Standarisasi Nasional. In this opportunity, I will give my presentation about national and international standard of medical devices. For my brief curriculum vitae has been already introduced by Mr. Dedi, so I would like to skip. The outline of my presentation consists of this following. Start by introduction, then regulation and standard for medical devices, then introduction of metrology, after that metrology for medical devices, and the end of the session is conclusion. So what is medical devices? Medical device means that any instrument, apparatus, appliance, software, material, whether it used alone or in combination, to be used specifically for diagnostic and or therapeutic purposes. Well, the accuracy and reliability of medical measurement are important as the direct consequences for the health of each individual patient. Inaccurate medical measurement can cause misdiagnosis or false treatment of disease for the patient. This is why calibration and testing of medical devices is very important and very demanding. Well, there are already the regulation in national or international which states that the medical devices should be tested or calibrated. In the international, there are ISO 13485 2016 medical devices for its quality management system, requirement for regulatory purposes, FDA section 7221 CFR, and then in the national, there's the regulation from the government which states in the law number 44 year 2009 about hospitals in clause 16.2, which states that every medical device should be calibrated. And there's also the regulation, national regulation, which is the Ministry of Health Regulation number 54, year 2015. This is about the testing and calibration of medical devices. The word standard here means not only in the regulation or on the ISO, but this means also the standard by the equipment. Well, what is calibration? The basic calibration principle. The calibration principle is to compare the unit under calibration, or we usually call it UUT, with the standard. So for this illustration, this is the illustration of caliper being calibrated with gauge blocks. The UUT is the caliper, and the standard is the gauge block. With the UUT with a reading of 10.001 millimeter, and the standard nominal 10 millimeter, and there are already the correction from the certificate, which is 0.2 micrometer. So the error of the UUT is the UUT subtract the standard. So the result is 0.001 millimeter. So the calibration means to know what is the error of the measurement instrument reading. Is it the error exceeds the limit of MPE, or maximum permissible error, or is the instrument still suitable to use? This last word, the last sentence, is usually for the testing. So in the testing report, they will state is the instrument still suitable to use or not, or pass off or fail, something like that. So citing from the Lord Kelvin, which with its famous quote, when you can measure what you're speaking about and express it in a number, you know something about it. But when you cannot measure it, when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is a measure of an unsatisfactory kind. So what is measurement? The measurement is a set of operations which aim to determine the value of measurements. Measurement can be a lot. For example, in this type, we measure the volume in the volume of water in the container. We have a parameter like how much is the volume, what is the temperature, and so on. And need some criteria or specification to determine the limit error, which this specification to determine the limit error usually comes from the standard. I mean the ISO or something. I mean they are already the standard from document standard. I mean, not the equipment. And okay, so what is measurement? Measurement is a set of operation which aim to determine the value of measurement. In this example, we measure the volume of water in the container, and this is the volume, the temperature, and so on. And there is it needs some criteria or specification to determine the limit error, which is usually the specification comes from the ISO standard. I mean the standard document, not the equipment. And every measurement, there's measurement uncertainty. So what is measurement uncertainty? The measurement uncertainty is the definition from the ISO-GAM is parameter associated with the result of measurement that characterize the dispersion of values that reasonably be attributed to the measurement. And the second definition from the FIM is non-negative parameter characterizing the dispersion of the quantity values being attributed to the measurement based on the information used. So this is for the example. What is the mass value of the eggs? From the figure, we could the mass value of x could be 23.04 or 23.11 or 23.18. Well, egg values might be lies between 23 and 23.4, or we can express it with the following sentence: 23.1 plus minus 0.1. Well, the value 23.1 is the estimation value of the measurement, while the range between 23 until 23.4 is defined as the uncertainty range. Why the uncertainty exists? The uncertainty exists since the process of comparison between UT and standard contain imperfection so that the measurement result could not be determined absolutely. The uncertainty source could be from reference standard, could be from the UUT, could be from the auxiliary instrument or supporting device, or from the measurement method, environmental condition, or by the operator itself. So here's the guidelines for the uncertainty evaluation. There's ISO-GAM, then there's the EA4-02. Komite Akreditasi Nasional can also develop guidelines for the evaluation and reporting of the measurement uncertainty. So we begin to the introduction of metrology, since the metrology is the science of measurement, which cover three main activities: the definition of internationally accepted units of measurement, for example, the meter, the realization of the units by scientific methods, for example, the realization of meter through the use of laser, and number three is the establishment of traceability chains by determining and documenting the value and accuracy of measurement and disseminating that knowledge. The word metrology, people often misspell it or misunderstood between the metrology and meteorology. So in this slide, I will make it clear that the metrology and meteorology is not the same. So the meteorology is science for weather. The metrology is separated into three categories, which is number one, scientific metrology, which deals with the measurement standard at the highest level. And the second is the industrial metrology. And the third one is the legal metrology, which was the metrology for medicines, for health, for medical devices, lies in here in the legal metrology. Traceability and calibration. Traceability chain is an unbroken chain of measurement comparison or having state uncertainty. This ensures that a measurement result of the value of a standard is related to references at the higher level, ending at the primary standard. In chemistry and biology, traceability is often obtained by using CRMs, certified reference material, and reference procedure. An end user may obtain traceability to the highest international level, either directly from a NMI, National Meteorology Institute, or from a secondary calibration laboratory, usually an accredited laboratory. And this is the illustration of the traceability chains. From the definition of the units, this is realized from the NMIs with national primary standard, and with also intercomparison with other NMIs to ensure the values, then down to the reference standard, then the working standard, and to the measurement itself. So uncertainty increases down the traceability chain. The smallest uncertainty lies in the top nationally primary standard, and the more lower the uncertainty gets bigger. That's this from the BIPM down to the NMI, then to calibration laboratory, then to the industry or hospital, then to the end user. NMI and calibration laboratory must comply the requirement, the ISO IC 70025 2017. General requirement for the competence of testing and calibration laboratory. To be accredited, the laboratory must comply this standard for testing and calibration laboratories. This includes also the calibration for the medical calibration laboratory. So in 2019, there's the redefinition of the SI-based unit. The left is the previous and the right is the new one. The SI in the modern metric system has 7 base unit from which all other measurement unit can be derived. On May 20, 2019, 4 of them, the kilogram, Kelvin, ampere, and mole, were redefined in terms of constant of nature. The remaining 3 are already based on universal constant. So in metrology, there's many subject field and subfield. There is mass and related quantities. There's mass, force, and pressure, volume density, and viscosity in this subject. And there's the name of the important measurement standard. So this is the candidate of the national primary standards. There's also the subject field for electricity and magnetism, for length, for time and frequency, thermometry, photometry and radiometry, flow, acoustic, ultrasound vibration, and also chemistry. So the traceability of medical device, at the end, it should be included in this subject field, traceable to the primary standard. Where there are metrological organization in top from the meter convention down to the CGPM. The CGPM is a committee representative from the meter convention, and there's the CIPM, which is committee up to 18 representative from CGPM, and cooperate with other international meteorological organizations like ISO, IC, CIENS, and others. And down, there is the BIPM and consultative committees for many different subject fields. So in BIPM, their task is to conduct the international research in physical unit and standard, and also administration of interlaboratory comparison of the National Metrology Institute and designated laboratories. Well, NMI. NMI is an institute designated by national decision to develop and maintain national measurement standards for one and more quantities. An NMI represents the country internationally in relation to the NMI of other countries, in relation to the regional metrology organization and to the BIPM. So NMI, they are part of the RMO, Regional Metrology Organization, depending where it lies, where the country lies. This is the Regional Metrology Organization. They are seen on the America continent, then Euromed for European region, then Afrimed from Africa, Comet for the China and Russia, and there's the APMP. We are the member of APMP, Asia Pacific Metrology Programs. So from the Regional Metrology Organization, we are under the Asia Pacific Metrology Program, and this is our my institution, SNSU-BSN, as the NMI in Indonesia. Previously is Kim Lipi or RCM Lipi, but after the Presidential Decree number 4, year 2018, the NMI moved from the Lipi to the BSN. And there's for the accreditation, Khan is the member of APLAC, and the APLAC is member of the ILAC. And this for the legal metrology, there is the Directorate Metrology, Ministry of Trade, and for the medical device, there is the PPFK. It's regulated in the Ministry of Health Regulation number 54, 2015. And they are the member of APLMF, Asia Pacific Legal Metrology Forum, and APLMF is member of OEML, International Organization of Legal Metrology. And this is our profile in the BIPM website. You can search about our NMI in this website. And in this website, they also provide the result of the interlaboratory comparison for every NMI. And this is the example. This is how we ensure that our values is conform with other NMIs. Like for the mass, Kim Lipi, the previous name is Kim Lipi, now SNSU-BSN. We are conform with the other NMI like NMIA Australia, CRIS for Korea, NIMT Thailand, and this is the example for pressure. Well, the purpose is the medical devices measurement or calibration should be conducted the comparison like this in the future. Well, this is our organization of the BSN. There is the CAN, Committee Accreditation Nasional, under the Deputy for Accreditation, and this is our institution. This is the NMI. Deputy for SNSU-BSN is under the deputy of our national measurement standards, which consists of two directorates. Well, there's a directorate of NMS for mechanics, radiation, and biology, and the other is directorate of NMS for thermal electricity and chemistry. And there's our subdirectorate. Each of them consists of the laboratory, the national laboratory, that own the national primary standard for its subject field. And this is the metrological traceability for health sector in Indonesia, which the end user instrument is owned by the hospital or clinics, and their equipment is calibrated to the PPFK or LPFK using their standards, and the standards of the PPFK and LPFK is calibrated to our institution SNSU-BSN, and our standards, some of them we could calibrate them. We can realize to the SI with using our primary standard, or our standard we send to the other NMI for the calibration. In this traceability chain, the Ministry of Health is organized the proficiency testing for the medical device, and the PPFK is authorized by the government from the Ministry of Health Regulation Permenkes number 54. They include the pass or fail for the testing of the medical devices. Well, this is the BPFK also. BPFK already have the work method for medical devices testing. They are from A to Z medical devices, from analytical balance until the water bath. But I cannot share the work method here. See this, it's restricted. And this is the ISO and the IOML, the international standard document for some medical devices specification requirement, published by IOML. This is for the example for the medical device like sphygmomanometer, medical syringe, pipette, ECG. They are already the standards, so we can refer to this document for the testing method. And there are also the EN, the European standard here also. And there's the list of recognized standard for medical device. I get this from this website. There are so many standards for medical device. I just show some example of them, like audiometric equipment for the ventilator, for blood pressure monitor, ECG, incubator, MRI. You can look many standards for the other medical devices from this link. You can download it for free. So what is special about the measuring device with measuring function? Often the measurement is based on physiological models or assumptions. For example, for the intraocular pressure, or non-invasive intraocular pressure measurement based on a comparative study of direct and indirect measurement on approximately 10 eyes of dead people performed once by Hans Goldman. Then this result in 1955. This result then adopted by the medical community and become the gold standard to this day. And there are also other examples like non-invasive auscultatory blood pressure measurement. Well, all epidemiological studies are based on Korotkov's techniques. Until this day, we refer to the Korotkov techniques for determine the blood pressure measurement. So what is the problem with medical metrology? In medical metrology, the primary standards are not always available because of humans should be the primary standard, but cannot be due to intra-individual and inter-individual differences. Yeah, for example, like blood pressure, each individual has different blood pressure value. So how are these problems addressed? So methodology for medical devices is based on a primary standard. Dr. Stephen Mike is categorized to three categories. It's MEDI 1, MEDI 3, and MEDI 3. MEDI 1, MEDI 2, and MEDI 3. Our primary standard is MEDI 1, a database of clinical data for general application, MEDI 2, and the third one is an individual clinical trial for a specific device, it's MEDI 3. So there are three categories in the traceability in medical metrology, according to Dr. Stephen Mike from PTP German, the NMI for Germany. Well, the classical metrology is, as I explained before, is consists of, for the classical, there are primary standard, reference standard, working standard, and the device itself. In MEDI 1, the traceability is the same with the classical metrology, but the second and the third is different, whereas the primary standard could be the database of physiological test signal down to the test device or generator, where technically traceable to primary standard down to the device. And the MEDI 3 is the primary standard is one clinically tested device and down to the transfer standard, which is technically traceable to primary standard and down to the device. This is for the example of medical device, liquid in glass thermometer or electrical anemometer. The working standard, they are calibrated with working standard, which is water bath. And the water bath is calibrated to the reference standard, which is calibrated thermometer. And the primary standard of this is the International Temperature Scale, ITS 90. This is from the example of the MEDI 1. I mean, the traceability is like the classical metrology. Then the second medical device is ergometer. which is the working standard is calibrator, and the reference standard is standard for dynamic rotatory power, and traceable to the primary standard, which is standard for torque, length, and time. This is the example from the PTB German. So this is the example for the MEDI2 and the MEDI3. For example, the medical device audiometer. This audiometer is calibrated using a transfer standard, which is artificial air. This artificial air is clinically tested medical device from hearing threshold, which is determined at 25 young subjects. In our institution, we also try to develop the traceability. My colleagues in the acoustic and vibration laboratory, they also designs the artificial air, which is traceable to their standard, which is for the transfer standard, this transfer standard microphone LS1, then traceable to their primary standard, which is laboratory standard microphone, with the range of humans hearing 20 to 20 kilohertz. We can see that the uncertainty getting smaller to the top. And this is the example for MEDI3. Well, how has the clinical test to be performed? The clinical test to be performed should be need a representative sample. For an example, representative for a serial product for mass production. The device has to use according to the description in the user's manual, and the performance of the device to be tested is determined by a comparative measurement with a reference device or reference method. For example, the auscultatory measurement of blood pressure. The reference measurement or procedure has to be performed in an optimal way. An example, well-trained observer, calibrated reference devices with small measurement uncertainties, and 2 parallel reference measurement at a time, and well documented to identify source of error in the study. Also for the estimation of the uncertainty. And there are also medical device, air-puff eye tonometer. When the clinical test is the comparative measurement between reference method and device to be used. Reference method for the clinical test itself is the aplanaton tonometry, since H. Goldman has done his study on the 10 dead human eyes with applanation tonometers. The transfer standard is rubber eye, which is clinically tested medical device with data more than 150 eyes. And this is the hot topic in this pandemic COVID-19. This medical device, the ventilator, which this device has the purpose to deliver the oxygen to the lung of the patient who is difficult to breathe. There are many parameters for the ventilator, like show on the screen. On the screen of the ventilator, there's the volume tidal, their parameter of flow, their parameter of pressure, oxygen concentration, and so on. Technically, there are metrological traceability for ventilator. the is shown in this slide, which is the ventilator is calibrated using the ventilator tester. This ventilator tester is the many BPFK or calibration laboratory use the ventilator tester from the commercial one like Fluke or something. They are the commercial one. However, the ventilator tester itself should be traceable to the national primary standard of flow, pressure, and volume, since the parameter in this ventilator consists of pressure, volume, and flow. And there's another parameter like the oxygen in here. The oxygen sensor must also be calibrated. And there's also time, the traceability of the time itself, to determine the ratio between the inspiration time and the expiration time. Well, in this COVID-19 pandemic, there are many college, from the industry, from the company, from the university, they built the open source ventilator due to the limitation of the ventilator equipment in the hospital. So many COVID-19 patients cannot get the treatment due to the short stock of the ventilators. So there are many people build this open source ventilator. And this open source ventilator must comply the minimum requirement for specification and performance, which is rapidly manufactured ventilator system, or RPMS version 3.1 issued by MHRA. The BPFK also make the requirement for the national requirement for the open source ventilator, and they refer to this document, the RPMS. However, with the test setup like in this slide, which is the ventilator connected to the test lung. The test lung in this case is the artificial lung. So artificial lung, not using the actual. And in this test setup, we attach the pressure sensor and flow sensor, oxygen sensor. So this sensor should be calibrated since they are acceptable performance. Like for the pressure is the indicated airway pressure shall be accurate within plus minus 2 plus 4% of the actual reading. And for the volume shall be within 4 plus 50% of the actual volume. And the oxygen concentration will be plus minus 5% of the set value. So the actual this test setup is to ensure that the actual value is under tolerance of the set value. When the current emergency, if the COVID-19 situation is already ended, these devices will not be usable for urgent care as full demonstration of compliance to the ISO 80601-2-12-2020 is unrealistic. So this ISO is the ISO 80601 to 12-2020. This is the standard document for the critical care ventilator, for the ICU ventilator. However, since this COVID-19 pandemic is, we need to build mass production of the open source ventilators. So the requirement is limited to the minimum requirement for specification and performance, which is stated in the RVMS issued by MHRA. And this is the test setup for the ventilator, which is the ventilator is connected to the ventilator tester for the inspiratory host and expiratory, and the outlet is the precision test lung. And the test lung itself must comply with the specification requirement of the compliance and resistance with the ISO 10651-4. And this is the image of the ventilator tester. This is the commercial one. Usually in the medical laboratory calibration use this device. So it is our task as the NMI to make the traceability for this device to ensure the measurement of the medical devices of the ventilator. This is the specification of ventilator tester. They are flow, pressure, volume, oxygen. So these parameters should be traceable to primary standard: flow, pressure, volume, temperature, and humidity, or certified reference material for oxygen measurement. And the next is the medical device for infant incubator. This is, I get it from the paper with this reference. Well, the infant incubator, they are the parameter of temperature, and they are the measurement ring, and also the specification, the tolerance, the allowed error for each parameter, like air temperature, body skin temperature, oxygen concentration, humidity, and also the mass. This measurement parameter should be traceable to the national standard. As for example, for the temperature measurement, in the down level, in the measuring equipment, the uncertainty is plus minus 0.8. Then calibrated with the incubator analyzer with the smaller uncertainties, 0.43. Then this device is calibrated again with the reference standard with the smaller uncertainty and traceable to the national standard itself. Measuring equipment, traceable to testing laboratory, then traceable to calibration laboratory, and the calibration laboratory to the NMI. And the next is the sphygmomanometer. The working standard is the calibrated pressure meter, and the reference standard is pressure balance, and the pressure balance itself could be traceable to the for the force and length, for the mass, for the gravity, for the effective area, for the length. This is the traceability from the manual sphygmomanometer, not the automated ones. And this is the traceability chart of the NIBP testing. I get it from the Mr. Liquid Sino from NIMT Thailand. This NIBP device is traceable to the pressure manometer. In the OML also, in OML regulation, they also state that the NIBP device should be calibrated with the standard with accuracy plus minus 0.8, the minimum requirement. The accuracy of the standard must be 0.8 millimeter of mercury. And this pressure manometer is calibrated using the pressure controller. This is their secondary standard in the NIMT Thailand. Then calibrated to the primary standard, which is pressure balance with a more smaller uncertainty. And this is in our national, in our nation, our current condition, the traceability chart of NIBP testing in Indonesia. The NIBP with accuracy plus minus 3 millimeters of mercury for the new, and for the used one is plus minus 4 millimeters of mercury. This is calibrated using the pressure manometer. There are pressure modules, DPM4 and BP pump. And this DPM4 and BP pump is owned by the BPFK. Well, as we know, the BPFK is authorized by the government to calibrate and testing the medical device, for especially for the blood pressure monitor in hospital. However, in the current condition, only the DPM4 in the middle, this device is traceable to our standard. This is to measure the static pressure of the blood pressure monitor. And this device, BP pump, they have it, but until now they are not calibrated to our institution. This device is called the simulator. I will explain to you what is the simulator. This is to test the repeatability of the blood pressure reading. However, these pressure values should be traceable to the primary standard. Usually, the DPM4 is calibrated using our pressure balance also with the lower accuracy, but better than the pressure manometer itself. We have two standards, Gutenberg, 1 bar, and also the measurements. And this is traceable to our primary standard. This is owned by our NMI in our institution. Well, I will explain about the difficulties to calibrate the automated NIBP device. So as we know, to calibrate the manual NIBP device, the method is simple. Just remove the cuff and attach it the tubing to the connection to the calibration setup of the primary standard connected to the primary standard, which is pressure balance. This is the easy way, and PPFK also can conduct this calibration just by remove the cuff and then connect to the DPM4. However, on the automated NIBP device, this is difficult because they are just consists of, I mean, when we press start button, then the pressure increase and deflating. It is different with the manual one. In the manual one, we can adjust the pressure, how much the pressure we give, 0, 30 millimeters of mercury, 60, 90. However, from the automated, this is difficult because the software in the automated NIBP has already performed the algorithm to automatically increase and then decrease the pressure to measure the blood pressure reading. However, the pressure of this automated NIBP device should be traceable, should be calibrated, should be traceable to the primary standard. This can be done with the access to the test mode or check mode access. This is the static pressure calibration of automated NIBP device with test mode or check mode access. Well, there are some method to access the test mode of the automated NIBP device. Well, in this case, for this type of device, as we can see, they're displaying the zero pressure value, 0 millimeters of mercury. The method to access the test mode is to insert the battery and press start or power at the same time. However, this method cannot be applied to all type of automated and NIBP device. I personally have tried this method for different types of NIBP device. I have conducted in my previous research. For the risk, I succeed. However, for the other type, I cannot access the test mode. So this method cannot be applied to all type of automated NIBP device. Maybe you can also try to access the test mode if you have the device, if you have the automated blood pressure device. However, for the several expensive automated NIBP device, this check mode or test mode is the feature of the test mode is available. As I hope you can see in the figure in the slide. In the number 5, there's the mode selector. There are average, manual, and check. In the manual, I look at the manual, and the check mode means that this mode is to check the accuracy of pressure display. So for several expensive automated device, the way to access test mode is very simple. Just change the mode to the check mode, and in here we can connect to our pressure standard and we can calibrate the static pressure. Well, the traceability for the static pressure is important since we determine the device determine the blood pressure of systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Of course, it is from the pressure value itself, or from the static value itself. So if the static value is calibrated, then we can know how much the error of the blood pressure reading. Besides the intra-individual and inter-individual, besides from the effect from our body itself. And there are second way to access the static pressure calibration of automatic NIV device, which is used by using the special connector. This is the example. I get it from the Mr. Liquid. Well, this connector is designed to close the pump and the valve system. You can see in the below the particle plug. They are designed to block the pump and the valve. But however, this special connector is only suited for some model and depends on the model of an IBP. Different model of an IBP, the location of the pump and valve is different, maybe, and the connector cannot block it. So what is happened is there's a leak of pressure. However, for new model, the special connector are not needed, but it need to short the circuit inside. So this is mean that the valve can be triggered to be closed. Usually it is normally open, and by shortening the circuit we can make it to normally close, and we can calibrate the automated NIBP device. However, this is required to access the inside of the NIBP device. So if your calibration laboratory and you're calibrating the medical device from the hospital, you must say to them if you want to access the test mode by means of, it could be by accessing the inside of the NIBP device. This should be stated in the contract according to the ISO 70025. So this is difficult. Then after the static pressure, then there's the dynamic pressure. The traceability of the automated sphygmomanometer. This determination of the systolic and diastolic pressure is traceable to the transfer standard, which is the software version for the determination of blood pressure value, or simulator, which is clinically tested with more than 85 subjects. And these figures below is how the clinical tested is performed by using the double stethoscope. This is the reference method by using the auscultatory method. by using two well-trained observer. Well, it must be like doctor or trained person to determine the correct sound, and then compare with the simulator all the NIBB. And the simulator is the simulator for oscillometric sphygmomanometer is they basically designed to test the repeatability of the NIBB device when showing the systolic and diastolic pressure. However, often the commercial simulator, blood pressure simulator, is doesn't correspond with the device measurement because the generated oscillation do not reflect the human signals. So the signals from the simulator, commercial simulator, is artificial one, not reflect the real human signals. However, the reproducibility of this simulator is excellent in most cases, and that is important for transfer standard. In the PTB, in the Euramed, there are projects for develop the infrastructure for the blood pressure measurement in Europe. They built the blood pressure simulator which is clinically validated by the clinical trial of database validated probe oscillogram with more than 1,000 signals from 600 subjects. Well, the database of the clinical trial is performed using the recording unit. This is the scheme of the designing the simulator, blood pressure simulator. Well, the acquisition of oscillometric blood pressure data from human subject is performed with the specifically developed recording unit. So with recording unit, we can acquisition the blood pressure data from many human subjects with different classification, different blood pressure, age, or male or female or something according to the ISO document. This database is for the preparation of a simulator database containing all oscillometric data together with clinical reference values obtained by auscultation. Then the processing recorded raw data to obtain the model signals to be output by the simulator. And the final step is the simulation to the UUT, to the sphygmomanometer under test. So this is the phase of the testing of automated NIBB device. And the recording unit itself has the requirement of the specification as stated in the ISO 810605:2020 with the following specification: with the pressure measurement accuracy less than equal or less than 0.3 millimeters of mercury, the range below 500 millimeters of mercury, recording time, ADC, the ADC, analog digital converter, is more than 12 bit, and the sampling rate is 100 Hz or 100 samples per second. And this is the setup test. This is the blood pressure recording unit from the CMS E3 Taiwan. This is for the NMI of Taiwan. This is their blood pressure recording unit. With the following feature, complying with the ISO standard. But the recommended procedure for collecting human blood pressure oscillating waveform is, the method is referred to the ISO 10602, which is non-invasive sphygmomanometer clinical validation of automated measurement type. And the second is EN 10604, which is test procedure to determine the overall system accuracy of automated non-invasive sphygmomanometers. Clinical condition, its participants should collect specific 3 human blood pressure oscillometric waveform by using a recording unit. So with your recording unit, we collect 3 data for each subject. The age of 3 subjects shall be greater than 12 years old, and the limb circumference within 26 centimeter to 34. And this is the same arm simultaneous method. So with the same arm, we attach the double stethoscope and also the NIBB device, and we collect the data simultaneously. This is the clinical trial. And for the waveform selection criteria, the difference between the 2 reference values, auscultatory value of the systolic pressure and then the 2 reference value of diastolic pressure should not be larger than 4 millimeters of mercury. So with the double stethoscope, we're using 2 well-trained observers. The difference of their reading should not be larger than 4 millimeters of mercury. If it's below 4 millimeters of mercury, then we accept it as the reference value. So this is why this is important to use the well-trained observer. And the deflation rate has to be in the range of 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury. No disturbance in the time interval, and 6 segments above systolic and diastolic. And this is the blood pressure simulator from E3, and the second one is from the CRIS. So E3 and CRIS, the NMI of Taiwan and Korea, they conduct the interlibrary bilateral comparison on the blood pressure simulator, on the measuring of on the automated and IBB device by using their standards in this by means of their blood pressure simulator. And the simulator, they are the requirement according to the ISO 810-605. There are requirements on the accuracy of the static pressure, which is the maximum error of 1 millimeters of mercury with the minimum resolution of 0.1 or less. And then the accuracy for the pulse rate with maximum error plus minus 1. And there's the repeatability of the oscillation amplitudes. For example, the standard deviation of the oscillation amplitude, peak-to-peak value of 10 repeated oscillation below 0.05 millimeters of mercury. And there's also the reproducibility requirement. So the simulator should comply to this standard. For the commercial simulator like PP pump, I personally don't know if it's already comply this standard or not. Since this is new standard in 2019, still draft, but now already official, already available. And what have we done in here? In January 2020, there's a collaboration between the B.Eng and the Swiss German University with the internship of Mr. Timotheus Christopher Tantokusumo. He is working on the development of low-cost, high sampling rate recording unit for clinical blood pressure data collection. So this project is basically to develop the recording unit before establishing the simulator itself to collect the database of blood pressure simulator. Yes. In the first stage, at first, we arrange the recording unit by using the Arduino and the pressure sensors and the ADC. This ADC is 16-bit, so this is more than 12-bit as stated in the ISO. And this is the configuration. For the software, we use the Arduino and PLX DAQ user interface. However, the problem is the sampling rate is only 21 samples per second, where the specification in the ISO is 100 samples per second. This 21 samples per second, this is already obtained by increase the baud rate, but still not still not complying the ISO 810605, which is 100 samples per second. Then we move to the second configuration by using the NI DAQ with this setup, with this arrangement, and the block diagram of the lab view. Well, the pressure sensor itself is calibrated, is traceable to our primary standard, it is the pressure balance, pneumatic pressure balance, with the automatic handling mesh, piston gauge, and they are also on the pressure controller. And this is for the small adjustment of the pressure by using the volume pressure controller. And this is the device. This is our recording unit being calibrated. And the result of the calibration from the 3 measurement cycles, we get the relation between the reference pressure and the voltage. So we can obtain the linear regression equation, and then we apply the equation for the regression. And the error between the reference pressure from our primary standard and the indication of the recording unit from the pressure regression is, this is below 1 millimeters of mercury. So this is comply with the ISO standard. And this is the example of the blood pressure data. This is the pressure oscillation graph. This is the pressure oscillation, and then the inflation and deflation. but somehow the result found the correct crop sounds correct. Data acquisition is not good. This is might be because the microphone sensor itself. In this case, we use the digital stethoscope. Um, we made ones. In the ISO, it should be used double stethoscope.
Ega, can we make the presentation quicker because so we can allow some questions?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dedi. And this is the example from the data acquisition of the clinical trial. Mr. Christo with me and Mr. Gigi. And there's the traceability chart of the other medical device. This is the patient monitor. Well, the electricity safety analyzer is traceable to the multifunction calibrator reference meter. The voltage is traceable to the PGVS, while the resistance is traceable to the quantum Hall. And this is from the ECG. This is I obtained from Mr. Likit from MT Thailand. The patient monitor, ECG simulator, then traceable to universal counter and the primary frequency standard. And this the SPO2. This is the missing link between the measuring equipment to the primary standard. So it should be to develop the method to complete the traceability or chain of SPO2. And the conclusion is, since the primary standards are not always available, it is necessary to replace them by an accepted database or by individually clinical tested device. For a truly medical metrology approach, the complexity of physiology measurement process has to be taken account. This requires a significant amount of medical competence in addition to the competence in the sector of classical metrology. So besides the skills of the metrologists, for medical metrology, we also need to improve our medical competence for a truly medical metrology approach. And there, thank you for your attention. Kindly please give feedbacks or comment, or if the time is limited, you can also ask me or contact me by email. And if it's under the other competence, I can also ask my colleagues from the other subject fields of metrology. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ega, for the presentation. I know now we can start with question and answer session. If anyone would like to have some questions, you are welcome. I have some question already from the audience, Pak Ega.
Oh yes.
He asked about why is it that for Indonesia case the testing, the requirement for the testing documents or the documents for the testing requirement for medical devices, they are not available to public. Is there any website or something like that where any, for example, medical device manufacturer can have access to those documents so that then they can comply to the required standard?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dedi. Can I directly answer?
Yes, yes, please.
Well, actually, I mean this work method for the medical device testing is under the BPFK. I mean, the BPFK have the authorization, and we as the NMI, we don't have the right or permission to distribute their work method. If you are personally interested for their work method, you can contact the BPFK, person for the official purposes, and that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So to be clear for the audience who do not know what BPFK is,
Oh yes,
BPFK is Badan
Badan Pengaman.
Penguji, ya, pengawas, Badan Pengawas Fasilitas Kesehatan,
Yes, yes.
or health facility supervisory body. So a sub body from the Ministry of Health,
Yes.
whose task is to test all the medical devices so that they are calibrated according to the standard. And by law, it is required for accredited hospital or clinics to have their equipment calibrated once every while. I think once every 1 year, if I'm not mistaken, so
Yes.
that then the hospital can be accredited. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions maybe from the audiences? You can raise your hand through the participants list. There is a facility to raise hand, and then as soon as I notice you, I can unmute your audio. That then you can raise your question. Anyone from the students as well is possible? Yes, Mbak or Ibu Dita Mayasari.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Is it okay if I ask in Bahasa?
If possible in English, because we have non-Indonesian audience here among us. But if it is very difficult for you, you can speak in Bahasa, then I can translate into English.
Okay, so actually, I want to ask about the bureaucracy in medical devices in Indonesia. Jadi, kalau semisal kita buat suatu alat seperti itu ya, lalu untuk mendapatkan sertifikat SNI itu kita harus kemana dulu? Urusannya ke BPFK terlebih dahulu, SNI, BSN, atau Kemenkes, atau bagaimana? Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Dita. So her question is when we want to develop an equipment or device, and then we want to have a SNI label. SNI means Standard Nasional Indonesia. Where should we go first to have our device calibrated or standardized or accredited? Pak Ega, maybe you can answer this question, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dedi. Ms. Dita Mayasari, I will answer your question regarding for the process, right? I look at the example for the open source ventilator. This is the example that our nation built our own ventilator for the COVID-19 pandemic handling in our country. So, well, this is also being discussed in the MMI group, the Masyarakat Meteorologi Indonesia, but I cannot explain all because the secret. Well, BPFK already make the requirement for the specification, and of course, before the mass production, we should make one sample that one sample of the device, one manufactured device, one sample that comply the requirement for the specification and performance in this in this example is for the open source ventilator should comply with the requirement in the RPMS. PVFK also have but they just refer to this document RPMS only for the COVID-19 purposes. So the first step is you must comply the requirement. Then after comply, from the next step to get the SNI or to get the mass production process. This is not my my domain of knowledge. Me personally, I'm a meteorologist, I'm not study about the regulatory, but somehow you can ask the our person in the BSN itself who conducts for the maybe to the MMI itself in Masyarakat Meteorologi Indonesia or to the CAN people. Maybe that's all. I hope it answers your question.
Yeah, so to highlight what Pak Ega means is actually Pak Ega is from National Standardization Body, National Standardization Agency. So his task is actually to determine the national standard, how to calibrate, yeah. But illegal aspect for the medical device is actually handled by BPFK. Is it correct, Pak Ega? Yeah? So not
Yes.
by
Yes.
BSN. So for medical devices, so for example, for the cases of open source ventilator, all have to be tested and calibrated by BPFK, which BPFK will test them according to the standard determined by BSN. So it is not all handled by a single body, to make it clear to the audience. Yeah. So there is no one super body for the medical devices. Yeah. Each institution has its own role. So otherwise, yeah, is to have a balance, check and recheck balance mechanism, because it is concerning with human's life. Yeah, something like that. I hope the explanation from Pak Ega is clear. Okay, we have other questions, Pak Ega, from written via the chat room here. This is from Dr. Prihatini Widianti from Biomedical Engineering Universitas Airlangga. He has two questions for you, Pak Ega. One is, in one of the slides, there is some information that the number of samples for testing must be above 85%. Is there any scientific reason for that? That is the first question. The second question is about the standard. There are three types of standard: working standard, reference standard, and primary standard. Are all the medical devices must fulfill three types of the standard, or only one or two of the standards? Thank you. So first question is related to the number of sample for testing. You mentioned, maybe you wrote, I forgot. Dr. Yanti mentioned 85%. Actually, what I remember is 600%, but she remembered 85. The second question is regarding the different types of standard: working standard, reference standard, and primary standards. Must the medical devices fulfill all the three types of standard, or how do they stand? Okay.
Okay. Please remind me if I answered the question wrong. For the first question, is there any scientific research? Well, this well, for the clinical trials number, we are referring to the ISO 810602. I mean, this one. So the author of this ISO itself should be based on the research scientific. There are a lot of scientific research according to the referring to the clinical validation. I cannot mention it one by one. Maybe you can refer to this ISO 810602 and look at the reference. It should be the scientific research is stated in there. And for the second question is, please remind me if I'm wrong. You mean that for the medical device should be calibrated just by one standard only, not by 3 medical standards, you mean?
So there are 3 standards that see.
You mean in the traceability chart?
Yes, traceability.
Okay.
Maybe Dr. Janti still could not get it. So how do these 3 stand for? I think, as far as I understand, so we as the end user need only to calibrate against the working standard, right?
Yes.
Then the working standard in the lab has to be calibrated against secondary standard from the national lab, and then national lab should have also been calibrated with primary standard. So this is traceability. It doesn't mean that our equipment has to be calibrated against all the standard. That's what my understanding, but maybe Pak Ega can explain it better.
Yes, Mr. Dedi is right. He explained the answer very well. This is what we call as the traceability chain. So as the end user, if you are in the hospital, you just need to calibrate your equipment to the working standard only. But to the calibration laboratory or something. However, their working standard itself should be calibrated regularly to the secondary and to the primary standard. I mean, this is to guarantee that the traceability chain is unbroken. There are not a missing link between the measuring equipment and to the primary standard. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So for the information for the audience, so usually for the laboratory, the calibration laboratory, there is the government-owned laboratory like BPFK, and so far that I know, please correct me, Pak Ega, if I'm wrong. BPFK has 4 laboratories across Indonesia.
Yes.
Aside from this, there are also private laboratories where the hospital or clinics can calibrate their medical devices through this. But of course, the private laboratories may not have as complete calibration equipment as the BPFK. Is there any other questions, perhaps, from the audience? The students? I haven't seen any question from the students.
I have colleagues, Mr. Oman Swas. Maybe you can help me also.
Oman Swas is also present here.
Yes.
Didi?
Yes,
hello? Can you hear me now nicely? Yeah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Pak Andira. You show here, in case our situational pandemic COVID-19, we need more ventilator. Yeah?
Yes.
In case at the university, he can design certain ventilator. What they have to do to get this, he can use this ventilator in the hospital. What's the procedure we have to do that?
What is the question, Pak Maruli? So can we
in case, for example, now SGU, SGU, he want to design certain ventilator. Now, before they can apply for the hospital, what they have to do procedure to do the system.
The procedure, Pak Ega, when a university would like to develop also ventilator, maybe to contribute or to participate to fight the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, what steps should the university do so that then their developed hospital and their developed ventilators can be used in actual clinical application in hospital or
Yeah.
other things.
Okay, so maybe I have explained in my presentation before that from the open source ventilator, which is designed by the university or industrial or company, they should pass the compliance requirement from the BPFK. I don't know it's already issued or not to the public, but in this current situation, we are collecting the methodologies, the standardization, the people from the producer and university, well, to arrange this testing for the ventilator. They conduct the private calibratory. I mean, BPFK collects the participants. I mean, the calibration laboratory besides BPFK to helps the university in building the open source ventilator to be comply with the requirement of the BPFK, which is from the MHRA. Well, of course, your ventilator design should comply the specification and performance requirement from BPFK at first. I think that's the important first stage, and the next stage for the mass production or something, maybe the government will also have. I think that's all as far as
Thank you, Pak.
Quite clear, yeah, Pak Maruli. So
yeah, thank you.
And is it all has to be tested via BPFK in order that the device is considered to legally comply to the standard. For open source ventilator, it has to comply with Rapidly Manufactured Ventilator System RMVS 3.1 standard document issued by MHRA. To speed up the process now, as Pak Ega mentioned, recently BPFK just appointed several private laboratories to help also to test university-made ventilators so that then they can comply with this document, so that those ventilators can be immediately put into the clinical implementation. Okay, I hope it's clear enough. Maybe there are other questions. We still have some about 5 minutes time. From Christo, maybe Christo is also. Oh yeah, there is a student raised her hand, Pak Ega.
Yes.
Her name is Elga. So just close
Elga.
your name. Elga. Okay, Elga, you please.
Similar with my name.
Please ask the question.
Thank you for your presentation, Pak.
Yes, Elga.
Good afternoon. I want to ask, if we build a device outside Indonesia and it's already have, let's say, international certificate, and then the device is brought to Indonesia, is there any regulation, or is it must to be calibrated again in Indonesia, or have to get another certificate from Indonesian government, or not? Can you get it? What I
Yes, I understand what you mean. Okay,
Yep.
Miss Elga. Yes. Well, for the regulatory in Indonesia, as far as we know, the PPFK has the responsibility for this, to ensure that the device that we make, whether in this country or outside the country, to be conform with the specification as stated in the PPFK work method that refer to the standard document like ISO, like something. So if you already have the certificate from the outside of our country, well, there in the law of medical device, as I said before, and Mr. Dedi said, the device should be calibrated and tested once every year. So, I mean, well, it should be calibrated again with the PPFK. This is to ensure that your device is pass or fail the specification stated by the PPFK. When your device is already labeled pass, or if your device is labeled pass, then you can operate. You can operate your device in Indonesia. I think most people know if your device have the pass label or green label, then your instrument is okay. Then that's the simplest way to evaluate which device is still proper to use. Of course, the regular calibration is required. The regular, I mean annually. Thank you.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Pak Ega, for the clear answer, and I think there are still many burning questions from the audience, which I think can be put into by email later. To close up, I would like to ask all the audience to show your video so that then I can take print screen, to report for the meeting, yeah. So thank you, Pak Oman, Pak Farhan, and many of the students. Please, SGU students, please show up your video so that I can print screen. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Kisro.
Kristo is also here. Sir. Thank you.
Well, how are you guys?
Yeah, almost all, but not all. This doesn't matter. I just take what is available here, just as a. Thank you very much. The report, the YouTube link. This is recorded, so the link to the recording will be given to you through the email, and those external participants, will also receive electronic certificate, and I will email you also for post seminar feedback, post seminar questionnaire. Again, thank you very much for all your attendance. Thank you, Pak Ega, for your time. See you next time at next seminar. Thank you. Bye-bye all. Have a nice day. Keep safe, keep healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.